Welcome to the Cold Plunge warm-up. The information provided is not medical advice. Consult your physician before starting any new exercise, diet, or therapy routines. One of the most common questions that I've seen lately is how to keep the water clean. So I wanted to talk about that really quick. I do have a few talking points. So the most important parts are you have to have mechanical filtration, which would be like a filter. And then you also want chemical filtration, which would be chlorine or bromine. You could use bleach instead. I use hydrogen peroxide, which is the Bacquacil 2-part. It works really well for me, and I recommend it to everyone. The other option, obviously, is just doing water changes. And I see people all the time say, like, oh, just do a water change. It's so simple, but it's really not, especially if you're indoors with it and you don't want to slosh water around. So downsides of chlorine and bromine, both of those are adequate, and they're typically used in a spa setting like a hot tub or jacuzzi. The reason I don't like them is because of the smell and the feel on my skin. I tried both, and I didn't like either of them. The chlorine just smelled really bad, and when I'm trying to focus on survival through the cold, the harsh smell was awful. So I didn't like that, and I don't recommend it. But I know it works. It's worked for years. If you're in the sun, it will evaporate a lot more often and quickly, so you'll have to replace it a lot more. But beyond that, it's really not that big of a deal. I would recommend a floating tablet dispenser with 1-inch tablets. Replace as needed. It's really quite simple. If you're going to do water changes, I would recommend doing them at the very most weekly, and that's probably only if you are showering right before your cold plunge every time. Otherwise, the water will get really dirty. Also, if you only do water changes and nothing else, you're going to have to scrub it really well because the bacteria will build up on the walls, and even if you change the water, it'll just be dirty as soon as you refill it, and it'll turn green quickly. Whatever you do, chlorine, water changes, hydrogen peroxide, I still recommend the filter. I personally use a canister filter with a 50 micron pleated filter in it. There'll be a link to that in the description. It's really easy to use, simple to replace. I replace it just about monthly, or as needed if it gets dirtier, which it shouldn't, but it could. And so that's going to be in line with your pump. I always recommend putting it after the pump. I've seen people talk about putting it before the pump, which is going to stress your pump out a lot, and you're probably going to have to replace it quite often. And those are, $50 to $100 depending on the size you get. So, wouldn't recommend doing that. So now let's talk briefly about hydrogen peroxide, which for me I use Bacquacil. Bacquacil is a 3-part cleaning for pools, but I only use part 1 and 2 for my cold plunge. Bacquacil has a chart on dosage. You'll just have to figure out the water volume of your cold plunge if you don't know how to do that. There's all sorts of calculators online for water volume calculators. And then do the math backwards to figure out how much to dose. I dose 1 ounce of part 1 and 2 ounces of part 2. And that's, for me, has been really great for keeping it clean. It's been probably 2 months since my last water change. The last time I did a water change was just because I had to change out a part. So it lasts a long time, keeps the water crystal clear. The filter keeps all of the sediment and detritus out of it. Without both, the water will still get dirty, and there's nothing you could do to stop it. So I tried doing just chlorine, and it turned green. I tried doing just hydrogen peroxide, and it turned brown. Without the filter in there taking out some of the particulate matter, it's going to always get dirty and be dingy looking. So recommend doing both. Let me know your questions, thoughts, comments, concerns. If you disagree with anything I said, let me know, because I'm not an expert on these things. I've just tested it out. And this is kind of the system I've come up with that works for me. So let me know what works for you. And don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. See you in the next video.